Hello everyone. We're back for our third deck in the review of Streets of New Capenna. Well, not really review, but the opening of Streets of New Capenna uh, commander decks. And this time we're doing Riveteers. So let's see what we get. All right. So we start off with Henzi Toolbox Torre, the commander for the deck. Let's see. Creature spells you cast with mana value 4 or greater has Blitz. The Blitz cost is equal to its mana cost. Spell for its Blitz cost. Okay, so it lets you Blitz for everything. Blitz costs you pay cost 1 less for each time you've cast the commander from the command zone this game. Okay, so you can eventually get to where you can Blitz pretty much any. So if you've played your commander out 4 times, you can Blitz many things for effectively free. So then we have the Beamtown Bullies. So this card I know has several combos where you can, with like the leveler, um, all kinds of like bad creatures basically, um, where you can more or less mill your own cards and then force it under your opponent's control and then goad it. So that's pretty cool. So then we have Glittering Stockpile, a basically a charge artifact that is also a treasure. So I'm not sure if this maintains the ability of treasures to be able to sack for one of any color. I don't know how the rules work out on that. I should probably look that up at some point. Um, so you can definitely keep. So you effectively use this as a mana rock, and then can one-off it to get a ton of mana all at once. Riveteers Charm, Riveteers Overlook, Artisan of Kozilek. Huh. So this is a effectively reanimation spell on top of being a 10/9 Annihilator 2. Let's see, Victimize. Choose choose 2 target creatures in your graveyard. Sacrifice a creature. If you do, return the chosen cards to the battlefield tapped. Wow, so that's a kind of super reanimate. I know this is a reprint. I just hadn't seen it in a while. Good old Explore. Farseek, so some good ramp. Garruk's Uprising, so give your creatures trample. And then access a draw engine with creatures power 4 or greater. Okay. Indrik Stomp Howler, so artifact removal and enchantment removal. Kadama's Reach, so some more ramp. Migration Path, more ramp. Overgrown Battlement, nice mana dork that grows for each defender you control. Rampant Growth, some more ramp. Tamir Sabertooth, so this had a really great combo where you could just create infinite mana and infinite creatures and deal infinite damage back in, I want to say, Allura. Was it Allura Reborn? Or was it? No, this was in Cons of Tarkir where you had that. It's Teamer. And then Death Reap Ritual. So it's a draw engine with your creatures dying, which is great with Blitz. Terminate, solid removal, Arcane Signet, and Commander Sphere, core mana rocks. Let's see. Then Bellowing Mauler, so a way to cause your opponents to lose life or sacrifice creatures. Protection Racket, at the beginning of your upkeep, repeat the following process for each opponent in turn order. Reveal the top card of your library. That player may pay life equal to that card's mana value. If they do, exile that card, otherwise put it in your hand. So it's effectively a draw engine. There's no real downside to your opponent um, exiling lands this way, but I could see how that could have a lot of politics assigned to or along with it. Wave of Rats. When it dies, if it dealt combat damage to a player this turn, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control. Okay, so if you blitz it, you get a free draw, and you can use it to keep dealing damage. So that's pretty useful. Industrial Advancement. At the beginning of your end step, if you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is that creature's mana value. You may put a creature card from among them onto the battlefield, put the rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. Wait, what? At the beginning of your end step, you may sacrifice a creature. If you do, look at the top X cards of your library, where X is that creature's mana value. Oh, so this lets you just turbo out creatures. Wow. Okay. That's crazy. Mugger? When it attacks, exile the top card of each player's library. You may play those cards this turn, and you may spend mana as though it were mana of any color to cast those cards. And it has Blitz for 3, so that is very powerful. Reign of Riches. When it enters the battlefield, create 2 treasure tokens. The first spell you cast each turn that mana from treasure was spent on adds Cascade. Okay, so this lets you turn your treasures into Cascade enablers once a turn. Okay, that's bananas. Turf War. When Turf War enters the battlefield, for each player, put a contested counter on target land that player controls. Whenever a creature deals combat damage to a player, if that player controls one or more lands with a contested counter on them, that creature's controller gains control of one of those lands of their choice and untaps it. So this lets you steal lands from your opponent. If that player controls one or more lands with contested. Oh, so it lets you fight over lands. Okay, that's actually really cool. Caldia Guardian. When Caldia Guardian or another creature you control with mana value 4 or greater dies, create 2 citizen creatures. And it has Blitz. Okay. Dodgy Jalopy. Its power is equal to the highest mana value among creatures you control. Crew 3, Scavenge. Huh. Neat. First Responder. At the beginning of your end step, you may return another creature you control to its owner's hand, then put a number of +1/+1 counters equal to that creature's power on First Responder. Okay, so you can blitz a creature. Oh. Yeah, so you can use this to blitz a creature and then return it to your hand. That's really cool. Next of Kin. When enchanted creature dies, you may put a creature card you own with lesser mana value from your hand or from the command zone onto the battlefield. If you do, return Next of Kin to the battlefield attached to that creature at the beginning of the next end step. Okay, so you can keep passing down. Huh. Yeah, so you can keep passing it down. That's really cool. Grime Gorger. When it attacks, exile up to 1 card of each card type from defending player's graveyard. Put a +1/+1 counter on it for each card exiled that way. So graveyard hate that grows. Okay, cool. Jolene, the Plunderer Queen. I love that rhymes. Whenever a player attacks one or more of your opponents, that player creates a treasure token. Wow. If you would create one or more treasure tokens instead, create those tokens plus an additional treasure token. Sacrifice 5 treasures, put 5+1/+1 counters on Jolene. Oh. Oh, that's any time you would create treasure. Wow. Riveteers Confluence. Choose 3. You may choose the same mode more than once. Draw a card and lose a life. Deals 1 damage to each creature and planeswalker you don't control. So this could, on its own, be a wipe for 3 damage if you want. And you may put a land card from your hand or graveyard onto the battlefield tapped. That is really powerful. You could return 3 lands with that and just, or, put into play 3 land. That's a huge ramp. Weathered Sentinels, Defender Vigilance Reach Trample. It can attack. So Weathered Sentinels can attack players who attacked you during their last turn as though it didn't have Defender. When it attacks, it gains +3/+3 and gains indestructible until end of turn. Okay. Aether Snap. Remove all counters from all permanents and exile all tokens. So this effectively kills all planeswalkers, which is huge, especially in black, and exiles all tokens. So this completely shuts down the strategy that the Broker's deck is trying to do. That's pretty awesome. Deathbringer Regent. When it enters the battlefield, if you cast it from your hand and there are 5 or more other creatures on the battlefield, destroy all other creatures. Okay. So it's a wrath. It's a 5/6 flying wrath, basically. Disciple of Bolas. When it enters the battlefield, sacrifice another creature. You gain X life and draw X cards, where X is a creature's power. Pretty classic draw engine there. Noxious Gearhulk. It's a removal spell that gains you back life. Painful Truths. Card draw engine. Let's see. Blasphemous Act. Good all-around removal. Chaos Warp. Now this used to be able to tuck not planeswalkers, but commanders. That's no longer the case. So it has gotten slightly worse, but it is a good all-around answer to any permanent. Although it can backfire on you with the permanent that it puts into play. So it's kind of a single warp world. And then Atali, Primal Storm. When it attacks, exile the top card of each player's library. Then you may cast any number of spells from it without paying their mana costs, which is broken in Commander. This is very good in Standard too. Good old Inferno Titan. Lightning bolt on a stick that you can spread around. And it's just a fantastic finisher. Stalking Vengeance. Whenever another creature you control dies, it deals damage equal to its power to target player or planeswalker. So a good way to finish up, especially with a board wipe, because it will see everything else die, including it. Well, it doesn't trigger off of itself, but it would trigger off of everything else. Let's see. Warstorm Surge. Whenever a creature enters the battlefield under your control, it deals damage equal to its power to any target. So another good way to flood out things and kill stuff. Avenger of Zendikar. Good old, just big fatty that makes more things. So when it enters the battlefield, create a 1/1 green plant creature token for each land you control. So with Avenger of Zendikar and Warstorm Surge, you can have the tokens come into play when when this triggers. In response to the trigger, you can fetch or something to put counters on each of your plants, and each of them will deal damage, which is pretty huge. Evolutionary Leap, just a great way to just churn through and get tons of cards. And it also pairs really well with token strategies, so you can just keep fueling cards into your hand. Let's see, Adaphage. Giant Adaphage. Whenever it deals combat damage to a player, create a token that's a copy of Giant Adaphage. So it's a card that just keeps making more copies of itself. Green Warden of Marasa, so it's a regrow with legs. And you get to regrow twice, basically. Life's Legacy. So basically a slightly better greater good, or it's a one-time use greater good that's a little better. Mitotic Slime. When it dies, you create 2 1/1 oozes, and those oozes create, or two oozes, and those creatures each create 1/1 oozes. So it's a really good for sack strategies to turn 1 creature into 5 creatures, basically. Good old Swag Tusk, aka Thrag Tusk. It's a huge life point swing, and it leaves behind a token. Tree Shaker Chimera. All creatures able to block it do so, and when it dies, you draw 3 cards. Pretty nice. Woodfall Primus, a classic reanimate target. And with anything that gives +1/+1 counters when things come into play, it lets you just keep reusing it. But when it comes into play, destroy target non-land permanent, or sorry, target non-creature permanent, and then it has persist. So when it dies, if it has no -1/-1 counters on it, it comes back with -1/-1 counter. And the way that interacts with +1/+1 counters is the -1/-1 counter and the +1/+1 counter counteract one another. So if you have something that gives us a +1/+1 counter, you can have it keep coming back, which is pretty nice. So this, something that gives +1/+1 counters, when something comes into play, and a sack outlet lets you just keep destroying stuff. Let's see. World Shaper. When it attacks, you may mill 3 cards. When it dies, return all land cards from your graveyard to the battlefield tapped. That's fantastic with a number of self-mill strategies and any kind of sack lands. Let's see. Crush the Bloodbraided. Whenever another creature dies, you may put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is that creature's power. Nice. Wind Grace's Judgment. For any number of opponents, destroy target non-land permanent that player controls. Okay. Lifecrafter's Bestiary. Whenever you cast a creature spell, you may pay green if you do draw a card, and at the beginning of your upkeep, you scry 1. It's very solid overall. Solemn Simulacrum. Good, solid commander card. It lets you ramp 1, and when it dies, it replaces itself. Cinderglade. Exotic Orchard. Foreboding Ruins. Game Trail. Kessig Wolf Run. Nice to see Kessig Wolf Run get a reprint. Mossfire Valley. Mossfort Bridge. So this actually works really well with the pump strategies that are in this, to hide away something huge and then get it for 1 mana later on. Then Shadowblood Ridge. Smoldering Marsh. Spinerock Null. Same kind of thing with Hideaway, and especially with the strategies that we have in this deck, where we're doing a lot of pumping and reanimating and blitzing creatures. So you're going to probably deal a bunch of damage to an opponent, and that lets you play something for just way less than what it would normally cost. Temple of Malady. Twilight Mire. So our thought on the enemy filter land seems to be correct. So it seems to have 1 on-color enemy filter land per deck. So, and then a Felwar Stone. So good. We're getting into our core commander stuff. Soul Ring. Ash Barrens. Again, great commander and pauper card. I know it says uncommon on here, but it has previously been printed as a common. Let's see, Blighted Woodland. way of digging out your basics, and also synergizes well with our land recursion spells that let you put lands back into play tapped. Jund Panorama, the discount fetch land, Myriad Landscape, Path of Ancestry, Savage Lands, Temple of the False God, Thriving Bluff. So it looks like we have more of the Thriving cycle in here because we have Thriving Bluff, Thriving Grove, and Thriving Moor. And then we have 3 swamps. We have 4 mountains. I suspect we have probably, no, we've got 5 forests. And then a full art swamp, a full art mountain, and a full art forest. And then our cardboard stand-in for our commander. Let's see, then we have our ooze tokens to go with the mimetic ooze. And on the back side, there are treasures. And then 1/1 oozes to go along with these, which are also treasures. And a couple of citizen tokens that are plants on the back. A beast token that is a plant on the back. And a treasure token that is a plant on the back. We get +1/+1 and Riveteer tokens, which I assume we would use these as goad tokens based on what null is in this. And then the spell phase, or the turn order cards. All right, and that wraps up Riveteers. So now our next one will be, let's see, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, catch a tiger by its toe. If it hollers, let it go. My mama said to pick the very best one, and you are it. Okay, so Maestros will be our next one. And yeah, thanks for joining us on this adventure. Next video will be Maestros. Don't forget to like, share, comment, and subscribe. And down in the comments, tell me what's your favorite thing to power out with the what's it called? The Beamtown Bullies. I want to know what card do you use to bully your opponents in Commander? Um, so until next time, thanks for joining us. See you in the next one. Bye.